Hi there, everybody. Normally I don't do a live stream, but I haven't posted a video or a long video about pandemics up here for a little while, so I kind of feel a little bit pressed to do exactly that. So normally my videos have been fairly well scripted, and I take information from the internet and I put it on the screen, and I go through the information and try and do a bit of a critique on it. And not only have I had about a quarter of my videos deleted, but I've also had some of the new videos that I've tried to put up deleted, even within 30 minutes or so. So it's a lot of work to be putting together, because it takes quite a while to do, just to have it not exposed or not getting kind of any views. So I thought I might try something a little bit different today, which is just a chat about my thoughts in relation to a fair few things that are going on around this pandemic. I've worked in health for 20 plus years, and I don't say that to say that I'm an expert, because I actually don't think I'm an expert in anything really, but I do like to look into things, and I consider myself more of a jack of all trades and master of none. But my experience in health means that I do know how to look at research, and I do know how to identify people who know what they're talking about. And what I mean by that is when I see some information that might be delivered by some scientists and professors and whatnot, I can kind of discern how good the quality of that information is. And one of my big concerns is that there are some huge names in the fields of virology and research and science that are being deplatformed, and that their information is just not getting out to the general public. I'm in a fortunate situation that, because I do know how to research a little bit, I can come across some of these guys and explore where they are, and I can explore what they're saying. And a good example of one of those guys, and I've mentioned him in a lot of my previous videos, is a Professor Didier Raoult, a guy from France, who right at the beginning of all this stuff had me raising serious question marks over the information that we were getting told in the mainstream media. This guy, some of the top virologists in the world use his literature and his books as a springboard for all of their work. And they cite him as one of the peers and the leaders in the field of virology. And this guy was creating, I guess, a bit of skepticism in relation to the narrative that we're being told. He was also one of the first people that I saw in around March, from memory, talking about a certain drug that we can use for malaria that basically had about 100% effectiveness in treating respiratory conditions in relation to this virus that seems to be going around the place. And why that wasn't just jumped upon and explored as something that was just this incredible thing to save humanity, is, I've got a big question on that. More to the point, not only was it not seized upon as something that could be used to help humanity out, the information about it has actually been repressed, and the people who are talking about this drug have been censored. And there's actually doctors in America and in the United Kingdom that I know of, and possibly other places, that have been deregistered for talking about this. And this drug is in numerous peer-reviewed medical journals citing its effectiveness. It's incredible. Even I stumbled across a paper from, I think it was in the early 2000s, maybe 2005, 2006, co-edited by a Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is now saying that that drug is useless. And that paper that was co-edited by him was saying that it could be one of the new wonder drugs in relation to treatments of viruses. So we got to ask ourselves what's going on. The next observation I might have is the labeling of absolutely everything as a particular pandemic that's going around. And I'm being careful with my words, because I don't want to see my channel go fully, even though it wouldn't really bother me too much, because I'm fairly disgusted with platforms like YouTube and Twitter and the censorship on those channels. So there is a type of beer called Corona beer. I think we all know about, and the Spanish word for beer is cerveza. So I'm going to just use the word cerveza when I'm going to be referring to what I'm going to talk about. And we know that everything has got a cerveza diagnosis at the moment. Everything. If we look at the statistics for the incidence of influenza around the world, in some countries they are having no influenza. And I'm not too sure if you're aware of this, but there's still some countries who are doing this. And this has been challenged a lot in some places, but it's still standing. If you have a positive cerveza diagnosis, within 28 days, if you die and you fall off your bike or you fall off a building, you will get counted as a cerveza death. It's incredible. Now, that's as incredible as that is. There is a new treatment in the form of an injection, and there are people all over the world that are having serious effects after getting this. And although they're having serious effects within a certain time frame of getting this injection, the serious effects are a coincidence. So I can't work out why health professionals and the health industry is telling us that if you fall off a building and you have a positive diagnosis within 28 months, this is a cerveza death. Yet if you have an injection as a form of treatment and something very, very sinister or very serious happens to you, it's just a coincidence. There's a massive double standard there, and there's a bit of hypocrisy, okay? And you may think to yourself, well, why would this be the case? This is too fantastic, too good to be true. If you look at the funding in America for advertising, some reports fairly recently, within the last few years, show that 70% of funding in America comes from the pharmaceutical industry. Google happens to own 3 massive medical companies. So when we think about the information that we're able to access that may put a negative light on either a certain type of treatment or the companies themselves, could it be possible that that information could be censored? For me, the answer is just a no-brainer. It's an absolute yes. And I firmly believe that this information is getting directly censored. So then we can kind of extrapolate a little bit, and we can say, I'm working in health and I've got really big concerns about this. I think we have to reach a tipping point where health professionals have to stop worrying about their jobs and the bills getting paid and have to speak out. Your own investment in your family and your family's welfare should be a top priority. But at a certain point, when do you say the wellness of humanity has to supersede that? Because if you've got children and you don't want to speak out because you may lose your house and not pay your mortgage, your children are going to be in a world which is a lot worse than the one we're in now. And bar some sort of sterilization, which actually is quite a risk with the stuff that's going on in the world, they could have children themselves. What legacy are we leaving for our children? I'm not convinced we're going to leave a very good one unless more people start speaking out and addressing their concerns. And not only that, we have to have some critical evaluation about the things that we're listening to and the things that we're seeing. I've got no doubt whatsoever that the information that we're getting on the mainstream media, CNN, all these 3-letter agencies, is absolutely heavily corrupted, and it is not factual. I also have no doubt whatsoever that the experts that are being shown to us on these platforms, the doctors and the professors, are just paid by massive industries to give us a dialogue which is not accurate again. So this is where we have to go into some better critical questioning. The better critical questioning should be along the lines of, if people like myself and people like the medical experts that I'm talking about, if we're so crazy, it should be really easy to give us a platform and debunk what we're saying and make us look very, very stupid. So why are some of these experts that I know about trying to get a platform and trying to even get an even debate with some of these other people who are telling us that we've got a pandemic, and they're getting shut down and they're getting ignored? If these guys are so crazy, I am at a loss as to see why their dialogue can't be just broken right open. And what you do see is you have these people who do take it to the extreme, and they're given a voice. And the voice that they're given makes people like me look ridiculous, because those people are talking about things that aliens and, I don't know, things on the other side of the moon, whatever it is. So even though they may have some relevant points that they're trying to make in relation to the current situation, the fact that they're chipping in some of this really, really out there stuff is a cynical method by mainstream agencies to basically target people from speaking out. It just labels everybody with this same brush of, you're crazy if you say something. So I'm probably going to wind it up a little bit fairly soon, but I feel it's very important just to have this discussion about some of these things. To reiterate the point, there's a lot of health professionals out there. I think we need to be making a stand. We need to be calling out the bullshit. Actually, that was the other thing I wanted to talk about, is this narrative that hospitals are overflowing and deaths are happening everywhere. I used to work in emergency departments. I worked in intensive cares. Every year, every flu season, every sickness season, we had this same thing. Even in my local area, only 12 or 18 months ago, we had code yellows. And code yellows meant that people were getting resuscitated in the corridors because there was no beds. It was crazy. If that was now, I have no doubt that that would be related to a certain pandemic that's going around now. If you do a Google search or some kind of normal search going back prior to 2020, you will see just in about every place, hospitals overloaded to capacity, staff getting burned out, overworked doctors. This is nothing new. Okay, so the only two metrics that we should be looking at are all-cause mortality compared to previous years and intensive care ventilated admissions. Okay, and the other thing, which is incredibly important when we're talking about positive tests, and this is the part that just drives me crazy. We've got this test, which is called a PCR test, which is a polymerase chain reaction test. And this works with the way we find out what's going on is a thing called amplification. And the amplification works in increments of doubling. So it goes to 1, 2, 4, 16, 32, 64, 128, et cetera, et cetera. At a certain point of that amplification cycle, things get exponential. And in and around that point of around 28 to 30, this is kind of the cutoff for accuracy with a PCR test. So when we hear a positive test, the first question has to be, what was your amplification cycle? Because after 30, the test gets very inaccurate. After 35 to 40, it gets grossly inaccurate. And after 40, it's a waste of time. Just about every single country is running their tests at a rate of plus 40. So I want to be really clear. So the only information that has any validity is if there is a caveat on positive tests. And that caveat should be, yes, we're running the test at 28 to, let's say, 32. So we have no idea what this means. Positive tests here, positive tests here, positive tests here. We're hearing about these new super strains of COVID. Hopefully that word doesn't get me censored this far into this video. And when we hear about super strains, the inventor of the test was a Professor Kerry Mullis, who unfortunately died the year before last, expressed that when the amplification cycle is taken to 60, you can find absolutely any viral particle you are looking for. Anyone. So essentially what that means is that if you have an amplification cycle that's testing for this new super strain and you're running it at 40, 45, you'll find it in any sample of anything. And I've seen some reports about gorillas having it and ferrets having it and mink having it. It is irrelevant unless you know what the amplification cycle is. Depending on the feedback I get from this video, I'll run a few more of these live streams and kind of deliver some of my thoughts. It's a lot easier to do something like this than to collect all this information from different sources and kind of put it all together and then voice over and edit it. It's actually quite a simple thing for me to do something like this. So the big points are we have to start asking questions. I'm very concerned about the future of my family and what the world is going to look like. Actually, I said I'd wind it up, but I'm in free flow, so I'm going to have a rant about masks. We've got decades of research on masks, 30, 40 years, and we've got some excellent recent research about masks. But anything that, and again, I use the word proves loosely, but anything that proves that masks are not ineffective or validates the information that we've had for the last 20, 30 years is not getting published. The only information that's getting published is the efficacy or the usefulness of masks. But again, we got to use common sense. So at what point do we have to, just this whole thing, trust the science, is just baffling me at the moment. So, if it's raining outside and all of a sudden the government tells us, well, we need a scientific experiment to validate whether that rain will make you wet or not. What am I going to do? Sit inside and wait until I get a scientific report back to prove the existence of wetness? There's a thing called common sense that we've lost. And in relation to masks, we can use some common sense. We were designed to exhale stuff, not only carbon dioxide, but lots of different particles. Okay, and they were designed to fall outside our faces because they're filled with stuff that can do us harm. Okay, so having a collection of this stuff in front of our faces is insanity. So I don't know if people know about how bacteria grows. Bacteria like a moist, warm environment. And what you're doing is you're putting a petri dish in front of your face. Okay, the spaces in masks are massive. So I think, depending on what you read, the fragments of viral particles are something like 40 to 50 times smaller than the holes in masks. And we're meant to believe that these things are protecting us. It's absurd. There's no logic behind some of this stuff. And we hear this thing, well, it's only a mask. It's not going to hurt you. Well, actually, there's loads of instances now of children getting bacterial pneumonias. Hypoxia. Hypoxia means more carbon dioxide in your blood. Carbon dioxide and water form a thing called carbonic acid. So the more carbon dioxide in your blood, even if it's slightly raised, gives you a more acidic environment in your body. We know that acidic environments in people's body causes cancer. Cancer likes acidic environments. The long-term repercussions of some of this information that we're getting are horrendous. This is a massive, massive experiment, and it's going against the science, or at least the credible science, before the so-called science of 2020, which is absolute rubbish if you start to look into it and if you start to critique it. They're based on small numbers. They're based on correlations as opposed to direct empirical evidence. They're also based on assumptions. And to give you an idea what I mean by that, I saw one study that showed these pictures of masks in these different kind of infrared settings or whatnot, where you can see the particles being stopped with a mask. Okay, and the assumption was that because particles are getting stopped, then those particles which may carry viral parts are not going to be infecting somebody else around you. Okay, massive problem with that. That's just an assumption. No study showed that that hypothesis was either correct or incorrect. And in actual fact, there were some in-hospital studies, in other words, studies that were conducted in hospitals with staff members wearing masks, that showed that because viral particles collected in the mask, they were actually spread quicker than people without the masks. So again, you're not hearing this stuff on the mainstream media, which, there's no debate. It's all one-sided narrative that we're hearing. There is no debate, and this is a concern. So I think from my point of view, that debate has got to happen. I want to hear the top professionals that we see on our television. I want to hear them debate the people that I'm talking about, and I want to be in a position at the end of that to listen to what both of those guys are saying and then formulate a better opinion. And that's called an informed opinion. At the moment, we're not getting an informed opinion. So simple message: turn off your television. Best thing you can do actually is get rid of your television and start looking at sources outside of what the mainstream is telling us. And I'm absolutely convinced at this stage that the information that we're getting from the organizations that are meant to be putting in place to protect us are actually giving us very, very disgustingly harmful information. Okay, I'll see how this this video goes down as a bit of an experiment for kind of my channel and whatnot. But it's good to have a debrief and a bit of a rant. I don't know how long my channel will last. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. And again, just look outside the square. Send me some messages. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to share some of my information that I've been researching. I mean, I've been looking at this for 2, 3, and 4 hours a day since this thing began. So I like to think I've got a fair handle on what's going on. And anything I say, I'm not for 1 second saying believe what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, as if you think there's stuff that I'm saying that that's inaccurate and you have question marks on it, that's fantastic. I'm encouraging that. But to the same extent, I'm encouraging you to have those same question marks over the people that are telling us all this bullshit. Okay, guys, thanks so much for listening.